Almost. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call a special meeting to order right now, 1:11 p.m., Monday, August 3rd, 2020. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ta,
Here?
Vice Mayor Ho,
Here.
Councilmember Contreras,
Present.
Councilmember Doe,
Here.
and Councilmember Nguyen.
Yes, here.
All members are present.
All right. Salute to the flag will be Vice Mayor Ho.
Please stand. Put your hand over your heart. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Ho. Next, call from City Clerk, please.
I have nothing to report.
All right. So next we have oral communication.
Yes, we received e-comment from Roger Mindrum. It just states, hello, Mayor and council members. I would like to express my concerns regarding the sales tax measure. Although I oppose the initial sales tax increase, mainly due to the fact I knew people would take their business elsewhere with a lower tax rate, but now that as more cities in our area have also increased, it is now more acceptable and a dire need. I will now support the continuation of the 1% above the 7.75%, but I will oppose and vote no if there is no sunset date. It is imperative to the residents and business clientele to be able to reinstate this every 2 to 4 years. I don't believe you even understand this concept. I may even vote yes on the 1.5%, but if no sunset date, I will vote no. Do your job better, stop wasting money and frivolous spending, and we may have a chance for a recovery. Sincerely, Roger Mindrum. And at this time, we have speakers who would like to speak. First one is Kyle Seasock. Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor, Council, and City staff for having me. I am Kyle Seasock. I'm the president of the Westminster Police Officers Association, and I'm speaking on behalf of today of the men and women of the Police Officers Association. I would just like to say, I know we're all going through unprecedented times right now, and the aforementioned leadership, as well as our leadership from our chief and the community outreach that we've received, has allowed us to not only maintain, but continue to strive to be better in what we are doing. The numbers have shown that crime as a whole in surrounding cities around us has all increased, some of it upwards of, double-digit increases. And here in Westminster, we've done a good job of maintaining where we were at. It's taken a little bit of an uptick in numbers, but for the most part, we've maintained our crime stats throughout all of this that we've gone through. Prior to the measure being approved, we were having issues with retaining employees. We were losing employees with mostly police officers with 10 plus years of experience. They were going to other local departments looking for stability. And then since the measure has been approved, our retention levels have flattened out. We're not losing officers to surrounding agencies, and we're maintaining our own employees. Our staffing levels prior to the measure were at all-time lows. And since the measure has taken place, we've upped our staffing to a level that I haven't seen in years. So we're looking at not only fully staffed, but we've also added a homeless liaison officer. We're in the process of adding a second homeless liaison officer. We've added a school resource officer. We've added 2 more motor officers to increase with traffic safety, which again goes to the public safety portion of it. Our patrol numbers are fully staffed. We've added a second canine. So now we have 2 canine officers. We've added Code enforcement is fully staffed, which in turn leads to them being able to go out and help with the businesses as well as the local residences and handle the problems that come their way and come up with solutions in order to bring more business into our community. Project W has been a huge success, not only behind the scenes, but when people see the blue trucks driving around and the individuals that are working on the Project W, I've heard nothing but rave reviews from the community about them as well. Our morale, again, has gone through the roof since the project, since the measure was passed. We saw the budget study probably about a month or two ago that showed some of the cuts that were going to be necessary should the measure not pass here coming up in November. And thanks to our Chief Lauterbach, as well as having the utmost confidence in our council to do what's right for the city, our morale has not dipped, even though some of those cuts were very discerning to our employees. They've maintained a high morale with the knowing that things were going to go in the right direction for everybody. Bringing SS to the ballot would not only allow citizens to make the choice to keep and maintain what we have now, but it's also going to allow us to project into the future and keep climbing uphill like we're doing now. We're providing local citizens, business, and visitors alike with the services that they've come to know and love from the police department. And at the chief's leadership, it's only going to move forward. So again, thank you on behalf of the men and women of the Westminster Police Department. We appreciate all that you guys are doing, and thank you. And that will be it.
Okay. Next speaker is Dan Napier. Dan?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Well, good afternoon, council members. Thank you for your time today. I don't know if you can see me, but my name is Dan Napier. I'm the fleet mechanic for the city in Public Works Division. I'm also the president of the WMEA. The reason I've come here, or I'm online here, is just like 4 years ago, is to speak with you regarding a measure that affects, actually, no, it impacts us all. When I spoke last time, I told us a brief story, and it's not going to be much different this time, to be honest. However, I have learned a few things about the city along the way. I want to share those with you. A few years back, the city received a 911 call from a little girl. I was actually up in dispatch at the time, and I followed the call on the radio. She was very concerned and scared. There was a stranger in her house. Our dispatcher stayed with her on the call, got her out of the house over to a neighbor where it was safe. Meanwhile, 6 of our officers with air support surrounded the house. An officer moved through the back gate, through the backyard, weapon drawn. You know what he found? He found 3 high school age kids around a table doing homework. He quickly put his weapon away and called out, "Hey there, any of you guys live here?" One of them said yes, a little perplexed. Our officer then asked if he had a sister. Did he know where she was? The little boy thought that she was in the house. So a short version of the story is one of the friends had gone in to use the bathroom. The girl didn't recognize him, felt threatened, and called 911. Anywhere else, any other city, how bad could this story have ended? A couple months ago, 405 project was moving along full steam, right at Westminster Boulevard. 405 project equipment operator was digging, not where he was supposed to, and hit a main water line. Our guys, Westminster's water department, went out after working all day and fixed it. It wasn't a simple fix. It shut down local businesses in the area. A few of our guys just stayed on working all night until the next day. Not for the 405 project, but for the local businesses. In-N-Out Burger, the motel, all the businesses in that area. They stayed so the people could come back to work the following day. Our streets guys, you know them well. You probably know them by first name. How many times have you had firsthand experience with a fallen tree branch or graffiti? I can't tell you how many car keys, cell phones, wallets have been pulled out of the storm drains and handed back to the owner right there in front of them. I'm just giving you guys and girls, I'm just giving a little reminder of who works here and what we do every single day. Once again, without SS, we're going to see a lot of that change. So this November, we're asking the citizens of Westminster to be allowed to decide for themselves how they want their city to be. I could go into detail about the measure, but I don't think now's the time. 4 years ago, there's a lot of talk back and forth. The council then took the matter very personally, and I'm sure that this council does as well. And I'm not saying one way or the other at this point. I don't think you should either. I give a lot of credit to our citizens, our business owners, our entrepreneurs. Let them decide. This year, hell, this year, I think more than any other, they've owned it, or they've earned it. Let them vote on it. Let them, the very people that entrusted you into those positions in the council you're sitting on right now, let them decide on the measure. Show the voters you support them as much as they support you. Let you decide, or let them decide. Let them vote on it. That's all we're asking. That's all I have to say.
Okay, next speaker, Saeed Shah. Are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Syed Shah. I was the president of the Westminster Chamber for 3 years, and we have a concern. There is, I will tell you, 50% of people in Westminster are non-Vietnamese, and I will tell you they feel discriminated. This is really interesting because that perception is going out throughout Orange County, and mostly because of the Westminster people. And we are concerned how that is working out, because we think that the Westminster people, especially the Vietnamese, can be the hardest working people that we have, but the perception is changing to something that they cannot trust. And that is very disturbing to the council and the city and to us. And I will tell you what they're saying, because it's coming from mostly the non-Vietnamese people in Westminster. What they're saying is that 65% of the taxes are being paid by non-Vietnamese, but 80% of the council members are Vietnamese, and 3 of them almost always vote the same. And it is generally known that a third person may be asked to come in and they will help him get elected with the perspective that they must all vote the same. That is disturbing. I was a big proponent of Measure SS, went out of the way to write many articles, and that was really to help a great police that we have, a great asset. However, $4.2 million was taken away and given to Little Saigon, to someone that these council members know. That was very disturbing, and they found a legal way to give him a tax break for 25 years. So Oversight Committee, we think, is a rubber stamp because they're assigned by the council. So we don't feel confident about that. And we asked them, what happened to the 4.2 million? And they said, oh, that was not in our charter. So the neglected West End with the 1.1 million that was taken away, that's mostly non-Vietnamese. And that was taken away saying that there was no interest, but that's not true. One project was approved by Chet and even had all the details, including a memo to Dick Jones. Were 2 meetings that happened with the Ranchitos Market. There are 5 owners, so it's difficult, but there were 2 meetings. They wanted facade improvement. So I think there's some concerns there. And then forcing Vietnamese to be the manager, Mr. Tai, who we know has had problems, has no prior experience, had Montgomery Park lawsuits, violator of city credit card, failure to disclose a bidder's relationship in the 600,000K financial software, purchase smartphone of different employees, just to name a few. So now people are talking, what's next? Bring in Tyler Deep to run the city and be in charge of the police, which he always wanted to do. So there is some concern. So people are worried and businesses are worried that a lot of the people that don't pay the taxes will get on scot-free, while those that are hard paying the taxes will be double dipped. So here's the situation we have. We expect 35 to 45% of the businesses to fail in Westminster because many of the businesses didn't have their payroll records to apply for the PPP forgivable loan. So it should be a concern. Why are there no records? Why are they not paying the sales tax? They should be held accountable before you ask us to double dip. So we are still willing to accept the 1%
1 minute
increase,
warning.
but only if we have an oversight committee that is not appointed by the council. Really, the trust is not there. I'm telling you, it doesn't exist. And so we're going to oppose it. We're going to send out mass mailing in Westminster and 10 other surrounding cities because we don't want this unfairness to happen to other cities as a warning. So we are concerned we are concerned for the citizens of Westminster because I'm telling you, no new business is coming here because they for second highest tax rate that it will be in Orange County, and you call yourself Republicans. So that is a concern. We think the city will suffer. They ask the businesses if they want to come in, and we have to tell them you'll be put in a competitive disadvantage like I was and many others. So we are concerned, and we're concerned even for the Vietnamese American. Take care and be safe.
Okay, next speaker is Jody Boyd.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jody, and it's a pleasure, of course, to be here this afternoon. I have one quick administrative issue, and that is, to the best of my knowledge, notice of this meeting was not posted on the city website until just before this meeting got started. So I believe that is a violation. Regarding Measure SS, I'd like to note that it does not, our current Measure SS sales tax does not sunset until 2022. So if I'm correct, I don't know why we have such an urgency to get it on the ballot for this November, except there is usually a higher voter turnout during a presidential election. I am completely against making it a forever tax. Most of the two of the previous speakers were members of the union or work for the city. And you have to really keep in mind who's going to actually be paying this tax. Right now, we are in the middle of a pandemic. Individuals, households, and businesses are truly suffering economically and are losing their jobs. So, I mean, every time I'm seeing more and more people go around the night before trash day, taking cans and bottles out of garbage cans. I mean, that's, a nickel each. This is telling me that economically things are getting tighter and tighter for people. And I have to tell you, most people right now cannot afford any more sales tax. And lastly, and I've said I'm not in favor of the forever tax at all because of the time, wrangling, and expense that it would take for the voters to get it on the ballot to remove it. But also, we know there's an inequity and that the city of Westminster has not dug deep enough to find every nickel and dime of sales tax dollars that is owed to our city. I'm pretty sure, and I have a list of all of the businesses now that have business licenses. I bet I could take a month to drive around and try to do a one-to-one match of businesses to business licenses. And we know I'm going to find a gap. We also have the issue of, even if a business has a Westminster business license, it's just a tax. There's no reconciliation between, are those businesses even collecting and submitting sales tax and the correct sales tax amount to the state, and is the state sending back to us the amount due? I think that's where we're losing a lot of money. I'll give one other example, and there's a new law that was enacted last year by the state where marketplace facilitators such as eBay, Etsy, Amazon, and the Walmart.com, they're all considered marketplace facilitators. So they're responsible for collecting the sales tax on the transactions for what their sellers sell. So in this example, eBay is
30 seconds left.
eBay is responsible for collecting that sales tax. I am not finding where eBay submitted that sales tax amount to the state and it got correctly allocated back to and credited to the Westminster business. There are a lot of gaps that we need to find and correct before we raise our sales tax.
Time's up.
I'm done.
Okay. Okay. Next speaker is Deborah Mariscal.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you so much. I always have to put in a plug for our police department. So Kyle, thank you so much for being first speaker. And you guys know that I definitely support our police officers, and it's amazing that we've been able to keep our crime rate down. Question that I hope could be addressed by the council. Why is this meeting at 1 o'clock on a Monday when there are people that are still working and may not be able to attend? Shouldn't our meetings be in the evening where more of our citizens could be involved if they are able to do so? I hope that you will address that in your discussion today, because I think several of us would like to know the answer to that. The next, when the original SS was presented, it was to keep our police department intact so that we did not have to go to the county. And I am completely in support of the continued tax after the sunset of our current tax. However, I would like to see some accountability. Now, I don't have the time, nor do I have the expertise to go digging through city records. I would like to see that sales tax money, not in the general fund, not to be used for pet projects, but an average citizen should be able to see where that money is going, either on a monthly or a quarterly basis. There needs to be accountability to the citizens. If you choose to put this on with no sunset clause, I'm afraid I have to walk with my wallet. I love Westminster. We've been here almost 21 years, but I'm unemployed now due to COVID, and I'm watching every penny, but I'm not doing bottles and cans yet. But I have to watch every penny that is being spent. I have to take care of my family. And if that means that I have to drive a little bit further to save a little bit, that's a possibility. Anyway, thank you so much for your time and consideration. And I do hope that you will be able to answer my question as to why the meeting today is at 1 o'clock instead of in the evening. Thank you.
Do we have any other speaker? City Clerk?
Yes, I have a couple more speakers, actually. Next speaker is, let's see, Danny Mesa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for taking the time to take my question. I'm also concerned with City of Westminster having this meeting at 1 p.m. and not really announcing it to the general public. Meetings should be held, I would think, in the afternoon so that citizens can and do participate. As far as this tax increase goes, I feel that it should always go to the citizens to be voted on and have accountability for that, not to have the funds go into any kind of a general fund or into any other kind of projects. It should all be clear cut. And when people do come to speak about these things, when we're able to go back to city council meetings, have less hostility, attended meetings. And I just felt that the atmosphere felt really hostile from certain city council members, from citizens maybe opposing them. I just think that everything should be clear cut, and that type of feeling from the average citizen should not have to feel that when they go up to city council, when they have a concern or they may not agree with something. We should be able to talk like adults and not get berated in certain cases. But anything with a tax increase should always go to the citizens and not into a general fund. And I just wanted to, let the council know that's how I feel as a citizen of the city of Westminster. I think Westminster is a great city, but we need to have some improvements as far as crime is going. Police are doing a good job with that, but my wife doesn't even feel comfortable walking down the street when we do our daily walks anymore because, we have all these drug addicts on Westminster Boulevard. It's just something that's before any kind of tax increase goes, that we're guaranteed that the funds are going to be in an account where the average citizen can see them, and it should be easy to look at. I thank you for your time.
Okay,
Next speaker?
Next speaker, well, last speaker is Terry Rains. But at this time, if anybody else would like to speak, please raise your hand. Okay, next speaker is Terry Rains.
Good evening, Terry Rains, Westminster. First off, how dare you discuss and vote on such an important issue during a special meeting with only 24-hour notice to the public? The agenda was posted yesterday on a Sunday, and the meeting is being held in the middle of a weekday when most people are either at work or busy with their kids and unable to attend, even via Zoom. I know about the August 7th.
I lost the audio.
That's my fault. Let me get her back. Oh, shoot. Terry, are you back with us? Terry?
I would like to start over.
Yes. Okay.
Good evening, Terry Rains, Westminster. First off, how dare you discuss and vote on such an important issue during a special meeting with only 24 hours notice to the public? The agenda was posted yesterday on a Sunday, and the meeting is being held in the middle of a weekday when most people are either at work or busy with their kids and unable to attend, even via Zoom. I know about the August 7th deadline for determining what will go on the ballot, but that is absolutely no excuse for this last-minute action. Council and staff have known about the financial position of the city, the fiscal impacts of COVID-19 and the looming sunset of Measure SS for months now, but have done nothing. Now, at the very last minute, you want to push it through with as little public participation and notice as possible. Lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on our part. Is this your idea of transparency? Staff is proposing to extend the current sales tax measure at an adjusted 1.5 cent rate indefinitely. This is not an extension, it is a new measure with a 50% higher rate and no sunset date. If passed, voters would have to follow a complex initiative process involving getting enough valid signatures to qualify for a ballot and getting a majority vote in an election to repeal it. A future council might vote to put such an initiative on the ballot, but it is not likely. No offense, but the staff report and justification contained within it is weak. It lacks convincing arguments and hard numbers and doesn't even explain why the proposal is for 1.5 cents, not 1 cent, nor does it explain why there's no sunset date being proposed. Why is that? The very nature of an emergency relief and recovery tax is that it is temporary, yet this is a proposed permanent tax. If the extra 1/2 cent portion of the tax is for emergency relief and recovery, then that portion of the measure should have a sunset date. Like term limits, I wish voters could have options on the ballot, a 1.5 cent tax with or without a sunset date, or a 1 cent tax with or without a sunset date, or a combination of the two with a sunset date for the extra 1/2 cent, or for both rates, or of course, no new tax at all. But if options aren't possible on the ballot, it is up to this council to consider all of these options before voting today. And I certainly hope you're actually listening for a change and haven't already made up your minds. Exactly how has Measure SS specifically maintained Vietnamese and Spanish-speaking police officers more than English-speaking ones? And the city did not make significant cuts to eliminate the $4.7 million deficit in this year's budget. They used large transfers from capital project funds and reserves to cover it. The report lists issues that residents are concerned about, cherry-picked from a community survey done 3 months ago of just 400 residents and not prioritized the same way. The ballot measure results were skewed to look more favorable than they were. Only 1/4 of respondents replied with a definite yes for either measure, 1 cent or 1.5 cents. Undecided leaning yes means they were not convinced. And even with those responses, the difference between support for the 1.5 cent versus the 1 cent measure was only 2%, well within the margin of error. The favorable results were carried by the Vietnamese respondents, who are less likely to have accurate information. Caucasian and Hispanic respondents were evenly split, yes and no to any measure. Only one Orange County city is mentioned, Santa Ana, the only city that has a 1.5 cent local sales tax, but it sunsets in 2029, goes down to 1 cent, and then sunsets completely 10 years later. And only 7 other cities in Orange County have a local sales tax measure ranging from 1/2 cent to 1 cent. Comparisons to LA County cities is not relative. I took a small poll online using 7 tax measure options. 0% voted for the measure as proposed here today. 28% voted for no new tax measure. That should tell you something. 25% voted for 1.5 cent, but only with a sunset date. 16% voted for a 1 cent with a sunset date. 8% voted for 1 cent with no sunset or a combination rate with 2 sunset dates. And 5% voted for a combination rate with a sunset for the extra 1/2 cent, just like Santa Ana has. But let's not forget which 3 council members defended their seats during the recall election using the no new taxes propaganda. A statement from Mayor Ta made on June 22nd, 2016, quote, "The long-term impact of a sales tax increase will be severe unless it is temporary. Many businesses will hesitate to move into Westminster or stay in our city," end quote. Now, let's see what he has to say today. This requires a 4/5 vote to get on the ballot. You had all better think long and hard about how you vote today. Please consider substitute motions first, because I highly doubt this measure will pass by the voters as proposed. Thank you.
Christine?
Do we have any other speaker, City Clerk?
Yes. Christine,
Mhm.
I would like to speak.
Okay. You can go ahead and speak.
Oh, thank you. I'm Diana Carey. I am the chairwoman of the Citizens Oversight Committee. I am here today to represent our committee, which is made up of Mark Lawrence, Ruth Piker, Vanessa Pearson, and Winston Syed. I did want to clarify, we are independent. It is actually illegal and against the Brown Act for us to discuss anything with the council members. Our committee wants you to know the following. You know, Measure SS was passed by the Westminster voters to keep our community safe and to prevent bankruptcy. And I am happy to report that the local funding generated by Measure SS has been spent in accordance with the community priorities, and that includes preventing cuts to 911 responders, police department, paramedics, and firefighters. Also, preventing the city bankruptcy, specifically with the police fighting gangs, drugs, preventing the elimination of our police narcotics, domestic violence, sex crimes, and human trafficking units. Repairing streets, potholes, code enforcement, and a community preservation unit were all mentioned by the community. We've also done promotion programs to attract businesses and create jobs. So with the local funds, Westminster was able to reverse years of deep cuts to vital programs, including public safety and economic development. And I would at this point like to remind everyone that we get back from the county the lowest amount of money of any city in the county at 7.36%. And that cannot be changed unless it goes to all the voters of California. We want to commend the city for setting up Project Westminster, the online portal, which has been invaluable and a very transparent tool for our community to be able to see improvement projects, for the business community to be able to connect with the city, for residents to be able to give input, and recently to receive information on COVID-19. A citywide survey was recently conducted, and it was clear that the community's overall priorities remain the same as when they were compared to the similar survey that took place December of 2015. So Westminster, like other adjacent cities, is grappling with both the health and the fiscal impacts of coronavirus. Now more than ever, residents rely on the critical services. And in fact, nearly 70% of those surveyed would like the city's local investment dollars to be expanded to help residents recover from the effects of COVID-19. However, these local monies, which help fund essential services, will soon expire. As we begin to confront the economic impact of this crisis, Westminster must have the capacity to support our local economy, or the city will once again be forced to make deep cuts to basic vital services, including our recovery and our local economic support and reinvestment. The committee asked me to reiterate that we will not be able to cut around the edges given the $17 million projected shortfall should the local funding expire. The committee supports the ordinance extending the existing voter-approved sales tax to 1.5% rate. Once again, we must be self-sufficient in identifying local funds needed to maintain services or to begin currently to plan for the drastic cuts that lack of funding will require. Most importantly, your vote today will allow Westminster residents to enact their most important right as Americans, the right to vote. So please allow your constituents, as we did in 2016, to once again decide their own future. Thank you on behalf of myself and the committee.
All right, thank you, City Clerk. Do we have any other speaker?
I do not have any additional speakers. However, I have been asked to address a couple of the concerns that were made during oral communications, if I may.
Please.
So regarding posting of the agenda was actually posted in excess of 24 hours physically at City Hall. As far as it being posted online on the city's website, it was posted at 11:20 a.m. yesterday. And if you don't see it on the website right now, it's because that that news blurb on the website has officially fallen off of the news feed, but it is still listed under the agendas, which on the agenda page itself, it was posted at around 11 yesterday. For anyone who, just for the future, who wants to subscribe to notifications, we do send out notifications for anyone who would like to get one whenever an agenda is posted. So that is on the agenda website. As far as the time for today, that was actually set based on availability of all the council members and ensuring that we would get all 5 council members to be able to attend and listen in on this discussion and have this discussion, which is why we came up with 1 p.m. today as the best option. That's all I have, Mayor.
Well, I really want to thank City Clerk for your explanation. I think that it really clear that it's about the time of the meeting. It's not come from me. I think that City Clerk already explained. I really appreciate that, and I really want to thank all the members from the community. Make yourself available to speak your concerns. I appreciate that, because I think that 5 of us, we would love to hear all the concerns, all the input, all the question from the public. So that's really helpful, and I really appreciate that. All right, if we don't have any other speaker, I'd like to have the item on agenda, placement of a measure on November 3rd, 2020, general municipal election ballot related to transaction and use tax. City Manager, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor Ta, Vice Mayor Ho, and councilmen. Thank you for the opportunity to present this very important matter. Thank you also to those of you that spoke today. We welcome and respect your viewpoints. I also want to mention that this is a serious request and a serious ask of our residents. I know that the council does not take this lightly, and staff respects that each of you may have different views on whether we should ask the voters for a 1.5 cent recovery measure during these difficult times. Today, I'm here to give my professional opinion that this is the right amount and the right time. As you are aware, 4 years ago, the voters passed Measure SS, our 1 cent local funding that allowed for the return of basic services, including critical public safety, public works, and economic development, as well as fiscal stability. I believe we've been good stewards of those monies and have spent the money as represented. We've had audits and the Citizens Oversight Board that can concur. At the time Measure SS was voted in, we knew that the 1 cent funding would not sustain our city indefinitely. And in fact, we would have to search for other revenue sources. A continuing 1 cent funding without corresponding cuts will still be a path toward bankruptcy as early as fiscal year 27-28. While we were able to increase our revenues by approximately 1 million last year as part of our cost recovery study, this does not come close to meeting the shortfall that the city's future contractual expenses present, nor the loss of the Measure SS funds as of December 2022. At this time, those funds have ranged from 12 to 13 million a year. Not so long ago, some may remember that day in July 2012 when we let go 1/3 of our workforce. This was due to the state taking away upwards of 30 million a year from the city, money that we used to support our economic development, our street and road repairs. In addition, the Great Recession created an unfunded pension liability that the city will pay down over the next 30 years. We've been able to address both of these with Measure SS. In the last 4 years, we've put a 4.5 million towards our streets and have established Section 115 trust accounts to deal with our pension costs by setting money aside that can be used in years that a budget shortfall could arise. We also established an economic development fund, which we were recently able to draw 1.1 million from in order to help our businesses through the offering of low interest loans. In addition to addressing these issues, the city's been able to build its workforce back up. Not only did we lay off 1/3 of our workforce back in 2012, but we also had mass exodus due to our low paying status and an unstable financial future. Not all of our problems have been solved in 4 years, but we've made some good headway. And pre-COVID, we were looking to add another 1 million towards streets and possibly up to 2 million to our reserves. I'm going to have Aaron Bax, the acting finance director, give a short presentation, and then I will return with the answer as to why now. Aaron?
Good afternoon, Mayor Ta, Vice Mayor Ho, and council members. I'm going to share my screen and staff is requesting the City Council authorize placement of the extension of the city's current voter-approved local revenue measure on the November 2020 general election ballot at an adjusted 1.5-cent rate. Council is not deciding whether to support or oppose this extension measure. The council's role in this process is deciding whether to place the measure on the ballot to allow the voters of Westminster to decide. So how did we get here? In 2015, after years of cutting vital services, including public safety and millions of dollars in state takeaways of local funds, Westminster faced fiscal insolvency. The state was taking approximately $12 million annually in general fund revenue and $30 million overall in local tax dollars from Westminster. The city faced an ongoing structural deficit and a $5.3 million deficit in fiscal year 2015-16. The city was considering drastic measures, including the elimination of the Westminster Police Department and facing potential bankruptcy as early as 2017. In 2016, Westminster voters enacted Measure SS, a 1-cent local funding measure to provide local funds for local needs with funding that legally could not be taken by the state. This local funding has allowed Westminster finances to stabilize and the city to begin restoring previous deep service cuts. In a recent community survey, 6 in 10 Westminster respondents believe things in Westminster were headed in the right direction. Measure SS was enacted by Westminster voters in 2016 and is a local 1-cent transaction and use sales tax that legally cannot be taken by the state. The funding that Measure SS provides is part of our general fund revenue, targeting priorities identified by local residents, including fiscal stability, public safety, and emergency response, assisting local businesses, and maintaining local infrastructure. This local funding is currently slated to expire in 2022. Local revenue measures are a mechanism common among cities in California. Currently, 263 individual cities have enacted local revenue measures. Voters in several additional cities are considering similar measures on the November 2020 ballot. With state takeaways, COVID-19, and increased costs of services continuing to impact local communities statewide, locally controlled revenue measures continue to be a favorable option as a collection system is already in place that minimizes administrative and monitoring costs. By law, no measure proceeds can be taken by the state. Current voter-approved funds have stabilized Westminster finances, allowed the city to continue to provide the basic services our residents have told us they value, enabled the city to backfill significant cuts from our local police department, reverse the loss of trained police officers to other cities, recruited lateral police officer transfers into Westminster PD, and obtained a close to full hiring status in our local police force. Measure SS funds have allowed the city to transfer $4.5 million to street improvements and establish Section 115 trust funds for both pension and other post-employee benefits. Several ongoing issues will continue to be a concern for the city. Like many cities statewide, Westminster has been affected by the fiscal impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. Westminster has had to account for $4.7 million budget deficit this year and has made significant cuts to make ends meet. When local funding expires, an additional $12 to $13 million per year will need to be cut. These financial issues mirror and are projected to exceed the issues present in the 2015-16 fiscal year. As we begin to confront the economic impacts of this crisis, we must have the capacity to support our local economy, or the city will once again be forced to make deep cuts to basic vital services, including public safety, which comprises 75% of Westminster's local budget, a concern as emergency medical and 911 response needs are increasing. Growth in current and historic employee compensation costs, and employee retention and attraction. This is a slide from the budget study session for the fiscal year 2017-18. As you can see, even then, we projected having a deficit budget starting in fiscal year 19-20 and beyond. The pandemic has escalated this even further. By continuing the 1 cent local measure, the city faces future deficits of over 4 million, requiring cuts to service levels and potentially leaving the city facing bankruptcy by fiscal year 27-28. The removal of locally controlled funding would significantly increase those deficits to over 17 million by fiscal year 23-24, with no reserves remaining. Renewing with a 1.5 cent measure would achieve a balanced budget for the foreseeable future and will allow for continued services at the level we have achieved with Measure SS to this point, as well as additional funding towards recovery, infrastructure, and community priorities. The projections, I just wanted to note that these projections do not include street improvements, but as you can see with the 1.5 measure, there would be funding available for that. Westminster has one of the lowest property tax rates in Orange County. Our residents pay the same property tax rates as everyone else, but less of the revenue comes back to the city. The only cities lower than Westminster are structural fire fund cities, meaning they don't pay for fire service out of their budget. Most of the property tax collected in our city goes to schools at 71%, and the county gets 12%. Our 7% is $6.8 million and is the second largest source of revenue in the general fund. Sales tax is the largest revenue source. There's nothing the city can do to change this percentage allocation. Top priorities identified by Westminster residents include protecting local drinking water supplies, keeping public areas safe and clean, coordinating with community-based organizations to help families who are homeless or suffering from food insecurity, funding city and community-provided health services to prepare for medical emergencies like the coronavirus outbreak, helping residents recover from the financial effects of COVID by maintaining local jobs, supporting local businesses, preventing the elimination of police narcotics, domestic violence, sex crimes, and human trafficking units, upgrading outdated life-saving equipment such as cardiac monitors, defibrillators, and jaws of life, preventing cuts of 911 response and paramedics, improving communications and outreach to the Vietnamese and Latino communities. This is the proposed ballot language. To protect Westminster's local finances, disaster preparedness, property values, local job programs, prevent cuts to 911 emergency response, police, firefighters, paramedics, gang, drug prevention, street repair, address homelessness, and provide other general city services, shall an ordinance extending the existing voter-approved sales tax at an adjusted 1.5% rate until ended by voters, providing estimated 19 million annually, requiring independent audits, oversight, all funds controlled locally, be adopted. In summary, current locally controlled funding is set to expire soon as the impacts of COVID-19 put the city in an even more challenging financial position. To provide stability and prevent deep cuts to the services our residents prioritize, staff is recommending that the city place an extension of the current local voter-approved funding on the ballot for voter consideration at the 1.5 cent rate. Staff is further recommending that all accountability provisions, including citizens' oversight, be retained.
Sharon. Now as to why now? There are several reasons why now is the right time. We are in the middle of a pandemic. Now more than ever, we need our first responders and an ability to help our small businesses. Without this funding, we will need to begin winding down as we prepare for the expiration of Measure SS. That means reducing the police force that we worked so hard to put in place. It means reducing the cleaning and servicing of our parks and facilities. It means long lines and planning with limited staff. It means cutting our community preservation unit, which assists with community and homeless cleanups. It means vacancies and oppositions that will not be filled with quality candidates. It means waiting for help from the state and feds that will never come. We need to have local funds to help ourselves recover. Right out of the gate, the state deferred sales and property taxes. These are the very revenues that support our city services. Also, by delaying a vote in November 2020, we cannot bring this back to the voters until November 2022. By that time, we will have experienced cuts over the next 2 years, and we will not be able to put any funds toward our community beyond what we could hope to get from the state and federal governments. In addition, a vote in November 2022 would at best result in a loss of a quarter of a year in receipts, as the measure would not become effective until April 2023, and at a worst, a loss of funds until another vote could take place in November 2024. The 1% extension will still require cuts and leaves no money for streets and economic development. Services will require cutting. Based on our survey, the voters are willing to pass this measure to maintain city services, avoid bankruptcy, and recover. Also, based on everything we know today, the 1.5 will be sufficient to meet our needs, not only currently, but into the foreseeable future. Therefore, I'm asking that council consider putting this measure on the ballot as presented to allow voters a chance to have a say in the future of the city. Thank you.
I really want to thank our city manager and finance director for your presentation. I think that all members of the city council will understand on the number, and we understand our current financial circumstance. So it's now the time for members of the council, if he or she had any question or concerns, it is the time to ask that. City council? It's really quiet today. Nobody wants to talk today. Member of the city council? All right, so this is the time for our city council to have action, or is it the time to discuss or asking any question or concerns? Member of the city council. Are we all here? Or on my screen, I cannot see anyone, but I'm not really sure that a member of the city council is still here. City clerk?
Everyone's here.
Okay.
If there's no discussion, the question would then be, do you want to entertain a motion?
So it's now up to the city council. Yep.
Okay, if no one want to speak, then I will.
All
First
right.
of all, okay. First of all, my take is that I support to extend the asset measure either for 10 years or indefinitely to extend the 1 cent asset measure. I consider that we are living in the very difficult time right now, as you can see from some of the speakers today. They have a very hard time as the COVID-19 affected everyone. And I do not want it to burden our residents as well as the city by imposing more taxes. People in our city, I mean, people are being laid off left and right. And they have a difficulty. And we, as a representative for the city, we need to be able to manage ourselves, within our means. After all, we are here to manage the city on their behalf. And I think that we have to understand putting even a half cent or 1 cent, imposing tax on them is a burden for them. So at this point here, again, I fully support to extend the 1 cent as measure indefinitely with no sunset, or I can even agree with if somebody decide to have 10 years of sunset. That's my point. Thank you.
All right, any other member on the council? Well, really quiet. So any question or any concerns from member on the city council? Is it a time for you to speak? Is it a time for you to discuss? Is it a time for you to ask all the questions that you may have? All right, so member of the city council? So it seems like we don't have any action regarding this item.
If there's no motion, there's nothing to go forward.
I think the council really quiet. I don't know. Yeah. City Council? City Attorney, I mean, like, no member of the City Council would like to speak or would like to take any action. What can we do?
We adjourn. In other words, at this point in time,
Okay.
you asked for discussion or action. There's
I
been
already
no
did.
discussion. I know, I'm just explaining where we are.
Right.
So there's been an opportunity for discussion. There's been no discussion. We've had one council member speak. At this point in time would be the appropriate time, if there's no discussion, to entertain a motion. If there's no motion and no action to be taken, then the only remaining step is to adjourn the meeting.
All right, so if no other members on the City Council have would like to speak, so I have to adjourn the meeting. So you all agree with that, right? Member of the City Council, this is the last call. Anyone would like to speak, or anyone would like to have any action, or anyone would like to discuss? All right, I don't see any member.
Dree, I'm not on council anymore, but could I say something?
No, I don't think so.
Do it by
I-
acclamation.
Sir, I don't think it's the right thing to do, right?
Is it now the time for the member of the City Council either asking a question, raise any concerns he or she may have, or take any action, but I don't hear anything. So I think that I have to adjourn the meeting because
Yeah.
there is no meaning to continue the meeting without hearing any other voices from member of the City Council, because I think member on
adjourn.
they already spoke.
Yeah, the
So
next
maybe-
opportunity then to address the tax measure would be for the November 2022 election.
Okay,
Could you repeat that?
The next opportunity for the city council to address this tax measure would be the November 2022 election. And if it does not pass, it would sunset on December 31, 2022, automatically.
And if I could add, as mentioned in the presentation, if it does go forward in 2022, the tax would not go into effect until April of the next year after the election. So you have a gap of about a quarter where there's a gap where it doesn't go into effect. So there's a period there where there'd be absolutely no tax.
So could you just articulate clearly, what is the significance of this meeting? And I know some speakers have brought that up, and I was also, I know that I've asked and I got somewhat of an answer, but could you again articulate clearly what is the significance of today's meeting? Why does it have to be today? Could you say it again?
Well, let me respond a little bit, if I may. The timing of the meeting is based upon when a ballot measure may go to the county. Ballot measures must go to the county by this Friday, August the 7th. If the council does not take action to put a ballot measure on the ballot by August the 7th, then there will be no ballot measure. And the next time the city council can vote on considering a tax or a tax renewal would not be till November of 2022. We would continue to receive the 1% revenue we receive today, but you will have to take steps in your budget in the 21-22 year with respect to potential loss of revenues. So at this point in time, the revenues would continue until December 31st, 2022, but you'll have to take steps as a council to anticipate the potential non-renewal of that tax should the voters turn it down, or should you not be able to put it on the ballot? Because again, based upon today's action, there does not appear to be the votes to put it on the ballot. There would not necessarily be any assurance in 2 years that the council would put the measure on the ballot at that point in time. It would require 4 affirmative votes to do so. And at that point in time, if they stop it on the ballot, it would then sunset in December 31, 22, and you'd have to make appropriate budget cuts and arrangements based upon that loss of revenue.
Mayor, may I?
Okay.
may I-
Please.
Thank you. I also want to say that those cuts are looking like $4 million roughly a year. And also just a reminder that this is a pandemic and we were trying and are trying to help our businesses, and there will be no money to help our businesses. I mean, we've got the 1 million that we got from the government, the feds, the state, but beyond that, that's it. There will be no additional monies that we can throw into economic development in the near future to help with them. And we will not only be facing cuts to our services, but we will not be able to extend a hand to our businesses that are hurting.
Well, I also think the council should be aware, and I'm sure you are aware, this is not the imposition of the tax. This is simply a measure to be placed before the voters for their decision whether to impose the tax or not. It is, you're not voting today to impose the tax.
Okay, may I ask a question?
Please.
Hear me okay? All right. So just to clarify, I'm really trying to understand the timeline and then the significance of having it today, this meeting, this special meeting. And so if we don't have this meeting today, so for 20, so the next time we can have the discussion of a renewal will be November of 2022, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I believe that's what you said. And so it's only August right now. Why is it that we have to have it in August, like today? What is the date today? The 3rd. Why not have it on the 12th of what is it? The next time we have a council meeting?
Because Christine can explain that, but it's based upon the county registrar of voters and their organization of elections.
Yes,
So
if I
Christine?
can, if I may. So the Registrar of Voters Office has a deadline. We actually have a deadline of 88 days prior to the election in order to let them know that we're placing something on the ballot. So that deadline is actually this coming Friday, August 7th. So we didn't have a regular meeting until the 12th, which would be beyond the deadline. So it had to have been a special meeting before the 7th.
Okay.
And part of that, if I could, and part of that too is that there's a preparation of a lot of election material. And so they have to set a deadline in addition to what's in the statute. So they have to actually get those in, the arguments in favor, arguments against. And so this 88 days prior to an election is a hard deadline that is set by statute. And that's
So
the reason why.
So basically for this year, for November ballot, for it to be on November ballot, you have to have it approved today by the council. And then that is in order for you to make it to comply with the 88 days before the election, right? Okay.
Correct.
So basically those are rules or whatever policies set by the ROV. Okay.
And state law, set by state law also.
And state law. I'm just trying to recap, and I'm trying to understand why today, okay? And I think that's really a legitimate question. And so if, let's say we, for whatever reason, we don't have a decision today, then we go into the following year. So then you're saying that, so the next time we'd be talking about it would be November election of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And so that would still be 88 days before that election, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Correct.
And then, well, I'm trying to understand, so bear with me. So 88 days prior to that election would have been the deadline, okay? Then let me ask you, so the money that currently, I know we don't sunset, we're not scheduled to sunset until November
December 31.
December 3rd, 21 of 2022. So let me understand the timeline of that sunset, that SS measure that we already got approved. So you're telling me that so when it's sunset, that means that's it. We're not getting any more money from that 1% that was approved back in 2016, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Comes December 22nd of 2022, we're not
December
getting
31.
December 31. Okay, so December 31 of 2022, we would like basically start the following year with no SS money, correct?
Correct.
So what happens? And what I'm concerned is the layoffs that you spoke about summer 2012. Okay, I don't want to see layoffs. I don't want to, I want to talk about that. So assuming that we sunset December 31st, 2022, if we don't take action today, correct? Then are we going to be looking at layoffs? Could you tell me, and can you tell me the timeline?
Forgive me, Interim City Manager Johnson. Before you answer that question, because I think this is a pertinent answer for the Vice Mayor and Council to consider as well. Before you answer, do remember the Lou Edwards Group has advised city staff that the 2022 year is not an optimal time to proceed with this type of election. Of course, it is to the council's wise judgment if you wish to postpone to that election. But do remember that the city was enacted the current measure SS in the last presidential election, 2016. And that's why we have recommended this upcoming November 2020 election, because it is in these types of elections that the community has the highest level of participation. In 2022, the participation rate will be much lower. So Interim City Manager Johnson, before you respond, I would urge the city staff and the mayor and council that success in 2022, of course, is within the wise judgment of your voters, but is certainly not a foregone conclusion because the demographics and the participation level is significantly different. Thank you.
So in answer to the layoff questions, Vice Mayor Ho, yes, they would definitely be layoffs because we cannot.
You were talking about the $4 million in cut that must happen if we don't.
Or
have or
other
continue
option is to continue. The other option, obviously, is to continue to eat into our reserves, which is always at discretion of council, and then hope, basically hope that we have something left.
Could you just answer my question in regards to when would that cut or that layoff be happening, or when would that happen if we're going to assume we're not moving forward with the renewal?
So we are still, as you know, working on our budget. We last week we talked about so we wanted some time to still review. So we're still reviewing our budget. So we'd have to come back with you.
No, it would just be an estimated.
The next 3 or 4 months. Right. And I believe you have to meet with the unions. So I believe it'd probably be in the next 3 or 4 month process that we could begin to do that. And I'll defer to our attorneys if I'm speaking incorrectly here. There.
Begin to do what?
We could begin to be seeing layoffs in our city.
3 to 4 months.
Yes.
Within 3 to 4 months.
We have a deficit. We currently have a deficit budget, as you know, and short of,
Of 2000, we are 2020. So you're talking about 2021, we would start to see the first layoff?
Well, unless the council decided they didn't want to see layoffs, in which case we'd be eating into our fund balance.
Okay, I'm just trying to get this whole big picture. I want to understand if there is any, why are we taking this action today? And I think I'm pretty clear with that. Because that was a very legitimate question by someone at this, you know, who spoke earlier, by the general public. And I now understand also that we need 88 days. And today is pretty much, we're looking at 3 days before that deadline, or, right?
Right.
Okay, so okay, I do not want to see layoffs.
I do not as well, Vice Mayor Ho. When we lost redevelopment money years ago, we had very little notice. We all thought that, oh, the state would never take that kind of money from us. They just would never do that. That was the belief and the hope at that time. And that came to pass that they did take that money from us. We now have an opportunity to start preparing and planning in advance. So while it may seem like 2 years is too soon to start planning, I think there's never a sooner time to start planning. And the pandemic just escalated everything. So, you know, top that with, we knew when we passed Measure SS 4 years ago that it was not going to sustain us through our budget issues and our fiscal challenges. It has helped tremendously in the last 4 years, and is our hope, you know, that we give the voters a chance to say, did you like, you know, do you want these services? I think we do want the services that our surrounding cities are getting. I know that there are other cities that are passing measures at this time, and it's not an easy decision. I respect that. It's a very difficult decision to ask people that are being laid off, you know, to continue to invest money in their city. And that's what we're asking. We're asking, do the residents want to invest money in their city in order for this to continue to get the services they want, the services that they've said to us that they do want and want to continue getting. If we don't pass this today, then we're going to have to start looking to our future and start winding down and in order to maintain some reserves so that we can continue as a city beyond, you know, 2 years. And then we're going to have to make some even tougher decisions. If we wait until 2022, and let's just say worst case scenario, the budget that doesn't pass, let's say it doesn't pass, then we are facing a 9.6 million deficit, no reserves, not deficit. We're 17 million deficit and 9.5 million shortage in reserves. And we will have no money. We will be bankrupt. So do we want to wait 2 years from now to decide that this is what we want going forward? Or do we want to give our residents time to plan for the future, plan now? The pandemic hit us, you know, overnight. It's just,
I know the last time before the pandemic hit, we were putting in, and I believe you've made it pretty clear, but tell me if I'm wrong, we put away what, $2 million in reserve?
yes, the last 2 years we've been able to put
last
2
2
million
years, and $1 million in streets, correct? And we were looking pretty good. So I'm quite, but who's to know this pandemic is going to hit and for how long? And so I think one of the reasons we're also quiet is because we're trying to absorb all this, and we're trying not to, we want to make sure people are not laid off. That's number one for me. That's my priority. Number two is, of course, we don't want to have to put on a tax that is unnecessary, or it's going to put us in a non-competitive position. But I know when presented with, could I see that chart again where we're getting the lowest property tax, correct? 7 point something, whereas I saw Santa Ana was at 19%. We're getting 7%. I think we're charging the lowest sales tax. Do you have a chart that's showing all the sales tax people are charging relative to us, City of Westminster, just surrounding areas? Do you have such a chart? I don't remember seeing it, but
we do. If our finance director could please share that.
Before, but I'd like to see it.
And just if I may, Vice Mayor Ho, cities like Fullerton also passed a measure, and they get, I believe, 15% in property taxes. I think Los Alamitos is also putting it on their ballot, and they get, I believe, 11.6% in property taxes. So all these cities get far more money. This is
How could we fight for a bigger share? I know I've asked this question before,
Yeah.
and I believe the answer was if we were to get a bigger share, somebody's gonna have to let go of their share. So how likely is somebody's gonna let go some of their money so we could have a bigger share? I don't think that's likely. Is that true? Because this is looking really bad for us. Look at, we're only getting 7.6%, and look at Laguna 26%, and Santa Ana, that's like right around here, 19%. Okay, I'd like to know, let's say Santa Ana, they're getting 19%. What is their sales tax rate?
Theirs is 1.5.
No, what is it now? I have the other chart I was asking for would be sales tax in our surrounding areas, in our vicinity of like Garden
9.5.
Grove.
I like to answer for that. I like to answer for that question. Right now, I think believe Santa Ana, they have 9.25 cents for their sales tax.
But Aaron, you should have a chart, don't you? I'd like to see it all in one place. We don't want to do it from memory, but I think to be fair, we need to see, and we want to see if we are the highest, where are we at? Are we the lowest?
Let me look. Let me find one and I will share it.
And while she's doing that, if I could just speak to one thing that needs to be taken into account is there's a possible, for each city that deals with this kind of issue financially, there's a maximum of 2% that could ever be taken. There's already 50, and you can, once it's taken by either the county or by the city or by a special district, the city no longer has access to it. So in Orange County, there already is a 50 cent taken by the county. So that's not even available. And if you look at LA County, they've assessed other taxes, such for homelessness or other things that are countywide. Once those are taken, they're no longer available for the city to utilize. What this measure is seeking to do is to essentially maximize that amount, to bring it to the city so the city controls it rather than the county. Essentially saying, let's take these monies, make them locally controlled funds that the city can make decisions about for itself. So I just want to clarify that. Right now we have 1% of that. The county has another 50 cents. There's another 50 cents potentially available, but eventually someone's going to take it probably. I'm just as a possibility. The county may have a measure at some point to take it. Once it's gone, you won't have it available in the future. That's something to consider.
Sherry,
So like to maximize the 2%, let's say if we were to continue with 1% sales tax, what is left? How much is left?
0.5.
0.5. So if we
Correct.
were to go with 1.5, then we would max out the 2%.
That's the max. Under law, that's the max you could assess.
regarding to the question that the Vice Mayor asked, I have the chart here. For Sherry, in the item of interest dated on March 4th, 2020, that you sent out to Mayor and City Council. Let me go ahead and briefly answer your question. For Fountain Valley is 8.75, Garden Grove 8.75, La Habra 8.25, La Palma 8.75, Placentia 8.75, Santa Ana 9.25, Seal Beach 8.75, Stanton 8.75, Westminster 8.75. I'm reading what
No,
yeah, right there.
yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. But what I want to know is this, in this table you've got on right now, Aaron. Now, this doesn't reflect the 1% increase already, correct? So, hello?
It does. 8.75 includes the 1%.
No, I'm talking about, say, for instance, Garden Grove. I know they had their 1% increase. And so that makes them 9.75 or that makes them 8.75.
No,
8.75.
Okay, so that already reflects?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, okay, I see.
So if,
Leave that on for a second so I could look at it, please. Thank
so if you keep the 1%, you'd be at 8.75 and you continue at 8.75. If you were to go to 1.5%, then Westminster's tax would be 9.25.
Okay, so could we go back to, if you're able to flip back, let's say I want to take a look at the property share, property taxes, okay? And I want to take a look at Fullerton their rate is at 9%, but their share of the property tax is what?
Fullerton is 15.6%, I believe.
Correct.
Fullerton, where's Fullerton on here?
Right.
Fullerton is 15.6%. So they're getting like double ours, more than double, right? About double ours. Somebody's making a lot of noise. And then look at Santa Ana, 19%. So they are like 2.5 times ours in property tax rate. And what do they charge in sales tax? Can we flip back to that chart? Santa Ana is at 9.25. Gosh, and we're still 8.75. So we're really not the highest. Santa Ana gets a lot of property taxes, yet they are at 9.25. And so if we stay at 1%, that's 8.75, and it looks like we're just in line with everybody else, but way below Santa Ana. So if we were to bump it to 1.5%, then we would be at where? At 9.25?
If you do it at 1.5, yes.
9.25. We'd be the same as Santa Ana.
Yeah, just if it helps, the property taxes were set as a result of Prop 13. And it would require state law in order to change those rates. But typically, the citizen pays the same amount of property taxes. The difference is how that money comes back to the different communities. And Westminster gets very few dollars back compared to other cities because of what its rate was in when Prop 13 was passed in the 80s.
Okay, so that's something for us to do in the future, figure out how we can get our state law to change. But
Past councils have looked at that issue and tried to come up with an answer.
and so what is the answer?
Well, we haven't found an answer so far. We've looked at it 2 or 3 times. We can, again, go back and revisit that issue, but that will take state law. And again, as you were saying, or somebody said a few minutes ago, if we get more, then somebody else is going to get less. So there'd be an adjustment to the other cities in order for us to get more money, because it doesn't change the property tax rate. It just reflects how much we get back from the county.
Okay, so let's talk about the first thing is the extension of this SS measure 1%. So if we don't take action today, and if we were to not vote or put it on the ballot to extend, let's just say if we don't put it on the ballot to extend for in November of 2020, okay, 2020, and we wait until 2022, okay, and put it on the ballot, we would have to lose about, let's say we're going to lose, let's say if the extension were to happen at that election, and if we were able to extend Measure SS then, we would lose about a quarter of the revenue, correct, from that SS measure, and we would have to lay off.
So I think what you need to look, that's true, but let's go back. If we do not act today as a council and put it on the ballot, if we are looking at a November 22 election for the extension, your budget, your finance people have to make the conservative assumption of what will happen if it does not pass in November 22. We've already heard from our pollster, our advisor, that she believes that there's a less likelihood, a weakened chance of it passing in November 22. So our financial people need to begin budgeting the year before, anticipating that you're going to lose millions of dollars of revenue. And so therefore, you'll have to begin budgeting the appropriate cuts, because starting in January of 23, you're not going to have those revenues. Now, if in fact you don't take those, you'd have to take those steps, because the loss of the Measure SS revenue is so significant that there would have to be across the board modifications in your employment and other services because of the loss of those revenues as of January 1 of 23. If you wait till 22 and it does pass, then yes, you would be able to then continue to collect it, but there might be a gap there in terms of when we receive it for about a quarter.
We already have a projected 4 million deficit for next year. We were able to cover that in the current year with one time and with cuts. And we could continue to do that, but faced with the 22 ending, a quarter of that would be over $3 million, making that 4 plus a 3 closer to 7.5 million that we would have to address. And if we lost the whole year, or if it ended and didn't extend, then that would be 10 million we would face in that year, which is why I believe Sherry said we'd have to start looking at cuts rather quickly.
Yeah, as I recall, you go out about 2 or 3 years after that, and you've depleted all of your reserves. You'd be in a bankruptcy position.
That is correct.
And Mark Mandel, I've been special counsel advising on some of this. What's happening with that one quarter phase in is that when the voters adopt one of these taxes in November election, it can't go into effect earlier than April 1st. And that's because there's some state law timing issues. So part of the problem here is that you have your sunset happening at the end of the year rather than in the middle of the following year. So if you have your election in 2022, where the election would be happening a month and a half before the tax sunsets, there's not a possibility to have the results of that election immediately kick in. So the tax doesn't sunset. Effectively, what will happen is it will sunset on December 31st of 2022, and then the new measure will pop up on April 1st of 2023 at the earliest. So that's part of the reason for doing the election in 2020, is that if you do the election in November 2020, first of all, you can do the budget preparation knowing the result of the tax and knowing whether the tax will be in effect starting in 2023. Whereas if you wait until 2022 to do the election, you have no way of doing good budgeting. And then second of all, if you wait until 2022, you will necessarily not have a tax in place for that first quarter. So what will happen is people will pay the current tax at the end of 2022. Then for the first 3 months of 2023, they'll be paying a 1% less sales tax. And then it will bop back up on April 1st at the earliest to the existing rate.
All right, so I want to thank our city staff.
I have more questions.
Yes, all right.
I'm sorry to
Please.
interrupt, but yes, the council, yeah, you brought up the sunset clause. Okay, so our sunsets 2022. I'd like to take a look at the cities. If I could see that chart again, the ones who have passed their 1% of their sales tax, and see what they've done. I mean, okay, so how many years sunsetting? How many years have they set it for to sunset? And whether or not they have a sunset clause. Is there anything like that that shows?
That shows you right there. So Fountain Valley sunsets in 2037, Garden Grove, La Palma, Seal Beach, Stanton don't have sunsets.
So Garden Grove does not have sunset?
Correct.
Fountain Valley 2037, is that like 20 years?
Correct. 17 or
Years, so Santa Ana is 20 years? Are 6 years? Okay. So when you leave it blank, that means it doesn't have an ending. It's like forever.
That's my
Correct.
understanding.
Could I, being that Garden Grove's right next door to us, could I take a look at Garden Grove at 8.75? So that's very, I mean, identical to our sales tax, and they don't sunset. And I'd like to see what they're getting for property taxes. What's their share?
All right. Let's see, that one was. Oh, just a second. Garden Grove is 13.7.
So is that twice as much as ours? Could you do
Almost,
the math?
not quite.
Okay.
We're at 7.6 and they're at
7.6.
13.7.
Wow. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you.
All right. I want to thank our city staff, a member from the public, member of the city council. I think we already discussed. If I don't see any question or concerns or any action initiated by the member of the city council, then I have to adjourn the meeting. All right, with that, so
No, let's not adjourn the meeting. I think, I'm sorry, am I interrupting? Can I speak?
Please.
Yeah, I do not, I don't want to see layoffs. And I apologize, but I know our staff has really worked hard. We love our staff. I have seen the summer, and I was not on the council at the time. Summer 2020, 2012, there was a layoff of about, tell me if I'm wrong, 70 people, the third of our workforce. Remember, I did not get on until 2016. And I have a pretty clear idea and pretty view of the reason why we're in this predicament. And I believe that our constituents have made the decision to go with the sales tax increase 1% back in 2016. And they should be able to make this choice whether they want to continue with it or not. I think that this council has made a lot of cuts. I came on at a very tough time, financial with the city, financial dire straits. And I made sure cuts were made. And I listened to the people, made sure the people have spoken. They wanted police and fire. That was very clear. And they should be able to make that decision for themselves. According to our interim city manager, as well as Aaron Bax, our acting director of finance, we would have, if we don't put this on the ballot, November 20, this year, 2020, And there will be some cuts, there will be some layoffs. And I do not want to see that. So I believe we need to find out early if the people would like to continue this SS measure or do they not? I don't think we as council members should be making this decision for them. So I'd like to move to put this measure on the ballot this November. And I'd like to see if we could do two things. Number one is, if possible, would like to give people a choice whether they want the sunset or they do not want it to sunset. What I have to say.
Mayor, can I address the sunset, if I might?
Please, please.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Ho. I know sunsets are a difficult choice. And in putting this on and recommending as we did, it was with the thought that we did not want to go through this again. And this council, not this council, but councils have made decisions in the past in the city of Westminster to reduce taxes. And you can do that without a vote. You cannot increase without a vote. You can always decrease. So the thought behind putting it without a sunset is to not have to go through this again. Give the voters a chance to put this on the ballot, and then should they speak up in the future and we are doing financially well, they could absolutely come and speak to the council and say, we would like you to reduce it. We've done this in the past. We've done it since I've been here. We did it with our utility users tax. When I started, it was 5%. They reduced it to 4%. So you can do that as a council without going to a voter approval for that. You cannot go for the increase. If we do not, and then again, if we do not take the maximum, the 1.5, who's to say the state's not going to come in and say, you know what? Every city that hasn't maxed out their sales tax, we need money. We're going to take that money. We're going to take that extra quarter, the extra 0.5%, and give it to the state of California. And we know the state of California does not have a history of helping our city at all. I mean, like I said, they've deferred our sales and property taxes currently. So they're not looking for ways to help us. Our citizens need to have that opportunity to help ourselves. And I realize sunsets are seemingly the thing to do, but we're in a sunset clause right now, 6 years. And if we don't put a sunset clause on it, we still have the opportunity. You still as a council have the opportunity to come back and say, you know what, 1.5 was too much. We don't need to do that to our citizens. We can reduce that. So that option is available to you. You put a sunset, come whatever, 10, 20 years you do this, we'll be right back where we are today in deciding, well, let's take it back out to the voters again. It's a heavy decision, and I feel for the fact that you're having to make that decision.
Well, I think, thank you, Sherry. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I thank you for that, that we're being reminded that we have the power to come back and reduce the rate at any time. And I know that a lot of efforts have been made back in 2016. This is before I was on the council to get this measure passed. And I really appreciated all the people who supported it and worked hard. And so I think that with that reminder, I would like to change my I would like to change it to putting it on the ballot without a sunset. And we can always have the power to come back and reduce that.
At a 1% rate? Or 1.5%? So I'm assuming you're saying 1.5% with no sunset. And the council could always reduce in the future.
Let me ask you something. And I think it was Christian Bettenhausen who mentioned that there's a max of 2% that we could take. And if we don't take the maximum 2%, the state will come in and take it. So if we were to do it at 1%, that would be the county. So if we're doing it at 1% and continue it at 1%, that would put us at 1.5%, correct? And so county could come in and take the other 0.5% from us, correct?
Correct.
And if we were to do it
Correct.
1.5%, and
Then you control it.
1.5%, we max out, and then that money nobody could take away from us, correct?
Correct. And you
Right?
could always reduce it in the future, and you could always reduce it in the future.
And then we could always reduce in the future. Are you sure about that?
Correct. Positive.
So does anybody want to make any comments?
Well, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? I guess would be the question.
But are we doing this at 1 or 1.5?
That's up to you.
And Vice Mayor Ho, as you recall, if you want to do it at the 1%, we would still have to be looking at cuts and very limited, if any, help to our businesses. So 1.5 is what staff is recommending at the time.
So we have the motion on the floor. Is that 1% or 1.5%? I'm not really clear on that.
I'm still thinking. Has it shown anywhere where the county has come in and take part of that 2%?
They've done it in LA County. They have done that. In LA County, they've adopted for example, a homeless tax, where they take a part of that percentage to pay for the homeless in LA County.
And that would be the money they took is dedicated to the homeless and not for
Correct.
not to go
That's
to their general funds
correct. And
services.
in Orange County, they've taken 0.5% so far.
Right, and the city doesn't control the funds. If the county takes it, then you're looking to the county to hopefully give you some of it.
Does anybody have any suggestions?
I just have a question. Can you clarify your motion? Maybe 1, and then 2, I just want to get Mayor Tah's thoughts on it, what he's thinking.
What was your question? I'm sorry, Sergio, could you repeat?
He asked what Mayor Tah thought.
I mean, like, council member, you are independent. You more than welcome to speak your mind. You know, I think that in the past, you know, I believe that no council member asked me for my opinion. I think that, and I think with this issue, I want you all to be independent. Hey, you speak your mind. You have your own opinion.
May I, in order for me to make a decision on the 1 or 1.5%, would you show me, Aaron or interim city manager, could I see how long or when will we need to go back to the drawing board? And I'd like to know what year that would be. If we were to move forward with the 1%.
Yes, I'll share that.
And what reason was did we not ask for the 1.5% from the start?
That's a good question. At the time, you know, it was still fairly new. Cities were not. We were one of the first actually that went out and said we need help because again, we are one of the lowest property tax recipients. So our troubles reared their ugly heads sooner than some of our neighboring cities. And again, we were very cautious, and we've always been very cautious, and not wanting to burden our residents. We've always been, you know, conservative in that manner, and maybe too much so in this case. We were hoping that we would be able to find new revenue sources. That hasn't come to pass. We have gotten an extra $1 million a year, you know, doing our cost recovery study, and we will continue to do that on a regular basis going forward. In the past, we put that on hold far too long, again, trying to not put a burden on our residents. And we just can't keep doing that. We can't keep not asking our residents to reinvest in their city and to do these things. We have very few ways of bringing money into our city, and I know taxes are not popular. I get that, but that's why we've been very hesitant to this. And again, today we're not asking the council to make a decision or to even express their belief in whether this is good or not good for the city. We're just simply asking them to allow the voters the opportunity. And I realize the 1.5 seems like a big ask. It's a big ask. It's a big ask, but we're trying not to do this again. We're trying to this is it, one and done. And if things get better, you can come back as a council and reduce that rate. So while 1.5 seems outrageous, we have not got very many choices. If we want to continue as a city, like our surrounding cities, and offer those same services that our surrounding cities are getting, you know, again, we're not asking the council to say, what is your personal thought on this 1.5? We're not asking what you're going to vote on this measure, because you obviously will have your own votes come that day. We're just saying, I'm telling the residents, we are telling the residents, this is what we feel as a city is needed at this point in time. You know, we don't know what the pandemic's going to continue to do to our city. We could do the 1%, and then what if this pandemic continues on? You know, and we're going to be making cuts, and we could be right back here again saying, oh, we should have asked for the 1.5. We're trying to avoid that. And like I said, when we did this 4 years ago, it was something new, but since then, many cities have passed, and many cities now that are going, they're not asking for expiration dates. I believe LaSalle did not ask for an expiration date, and I don't know about Fullerton, but perhaps the attorney can answer on that. I did confirm with LaSalle that they did not ask for a sunset.
Fullerton's not proposing a sunset date either. But Mrs. Ho, if you can look at the chart that's before you, the rest of council, this shows you where you are financially. So if the sales tax measure sunsets in December 31 of 2022 and does not pass, you're essentially bankrupt in the 23-24 year. If you maintain the 1% sales tax measure, you'll reduce your reserves from about $25 million to $10 million, unless you reduce your reserves by $14 million. And you can see at the 1.5, you'll go from 25 to approximately 32 million in reserves. Those are the economic implications of no sales tax measure, a 1% and a 1.5% measure.
Thank you. Now I want to turn to the Lou Edwards Group. I'd like to know, could you tell me, you've done some surveys. Could you tell me the results of the surveys? What are the people saying, our constituents saying about this?
Hello, hi, can you see me?
Yes.
Hi there, this is
Hi.
Jennifer Longley. I'm a colleague of Catherine Lewis at the Lou Edwards Group. Apologies, Vice Mayor, when I was getting come in, I missed the end of your question. So all I heard was you wanted to hear about something to do with what the community has said and what their priorities are.
Yeah, the survey.
Sure.
So what are people saying about the SS measure, about the 1% or the 1.5%? I don't know. What kind of questions did you ask them and what were the answers?
Oh, certainly. So this community survey was an updated survey. We've done previous surveys for the city as well with the longtime polling professional, FM3. And we asked a number of meetings, a number of questions. We asked how folks felt about the city, and asked what their priorities were, and then asked for possible solutions. So wanted to, I guess, to ask the Vice Mayor, what specifically were you hoping to know?
Well, I'd like to know how they feel about the SS measure, the 1%, whether they want to continue with the 1%, or did you ask them about 1.5? What were your questions? What did you ask them?
Sure, absolutely. We asked folks, and let me pull this up, take a look. I believe we may have sent a final report to the city. So let me take a look at what that is. I believe, Sherry, that may be online, but let me pull up my version of it. So we had 400 completed survey interviews. Obviously, we talked to folks in English, Vietnamese, and Spanish with an overall margin of error of 4.9%. The community attitudes actually are pretty good for the city. They'd like to know, well done to the city council. About 60% or 6 in 10 respondents believe that things in Westminster are headed in the right direction. They are concerned or extremely or very about the coronavirus, about 61%. We've obviously looked at priorities, and we asked both questions. So we asked it 1.5 cents, and we asked it 1 cent as well. And after all information, it looks like there's actually a little bit more support for the measure at 1.5% than at 1%. So
why?
You know, I wouldn't be able to say why folks said what they said, but
How did you ask them? How did you ask them?
Certainly, we asked, we both were asked within the survey itself. So we asked them, again, some qualifying questions to sort of set the table, asked folks about what they thought about the city, how they thought the city was handling, again, COVID response, or the concerns people had about COVID. That's obviously the top concern of folks right now. And then we asked them, without any information, whether or not they were supportive of a 1.5 cent or 1 cent measure. And it looks like after sort of talking back and forth and getting different pieces of information, asking them again, and after getting information about where the city was and what the city's needs were, folks did seem to be interested in both, but more interested in the 1.5%.
So did you say, like, with 1% you wouldn't get this, with 1.5 you would get that? That's what I'm getting at.
Oh, I see. No, we
want to vote
talked
for more tax, right?
Yes,
But-
if I might, Jennifer. Hello again, Vice Mayor Ho. There were 2 different ballot questions that were drafted by City Attorney Jones and City Attorney Bettenhausen. And so the 2 questions were asked to, they were split sampled. And so it was just a straight up and down read. And my interpretation of the results was that in these difficult times, people frankly want their taxpayer dollars to stay local. And so their interpretation of the measure would be that there would be a greater amount of increment that would stay local to maintain their services.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other council member have any question or concerns?
So I know on the floor, I know what's the, so what's on the floor right now?
So what is on the floor? I think you make a motion, but you didn't mention whether or not 1 or 1.5%, right?
Yeah. Okay. I want to revise that simply because I feel, the people need to make the decision. And I feel that if we allow the voters, and there's a little bit of risk, like I said, we're, putting the ball in their court. We tell them that vote for the 1.5%, yes or no. And if they vote no, then that's it. We get nothing. Is that right? Could somebody clarify? Does that mean when we sunset in 2022 and we won't get that either, the 1% either? Could somebody answer that question?
City Attorney Jones, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Yes, so if you vote in November of 20 for the 1.5 and the voters turn that down, you still have the ability to go back to the voters in November of 22 at some other percentage. And the voters could then vote it in. So you do have one more opportunity after the November 2020 election to have the voters approve a tax in November of 22.
So,
but there would be the loss of the tax for 1 quarter if you did that. Right. There's also the possibility that the county might take the extra 0.5% in the meantime. And you will also have to deal with, if there are layoffs or other implications in between, you'll have to take those actions because you don't know it will pass. Again, I'm not advocating either way, but I'm just trying to explain these are the implications of waiting.
No, we'll have to budget based upon the possibility. We have to be conservative in our budgeting.
So if we can put that table, I mean, you could tell that I'm not taking this lightly. I mean, I'm trying to look at every single angle. Okay, I'm looking at from the point of view of, the constituents and see what they want. And that's why I wanted to talk to the Lou Edwards group. But then I want to go back to the table. I want to take a look, and that would be the last table you put up there.
This one?
And yes. So we're in the red. If we were to do the 1%, let's say if we take it away, then we would be like, that would be the first one, right? The top one, loss of measure. If we lost it,
correct,
we get nothing. No SS measure, that would be the top. And so we're in the red, but like 3 times. And then with the measure 1%, okay, by 2023, correct? And then
Yes.
1.5%. Now, if we were to do 1.5%, we're saying that we're never going to go back and ask them for more, correct?
You
And
can't
then
you can't legally ask for more. You've maxed out. You can't ask for more.
because then you would add 2%, and you
Correct.
max it out, and you get to keep your dollars locally.
Correct.
It doesn't go to the county.
Correct.
Okay. Now I want to go back to the Lou Edwards group again. Could I ask you just to answer me very simply? Can I have Ms. Lou?
Yes, yes, I'm here. Vice Mayor, I'm here.
Okay, I'm seeing Mr. Jones right now. Okay. Okay, so, okay, I just want to know, what did they say about 1.5% when you did the survey?
They preferred the 1.5 cent rate.
And how many people, is there a percentage that you could give me of the people you asked?
Well, yes, on the third, the final test, and it was tested 3 times in the survey, it was 60% yes.
60% yes.
60% yes for a simple majority requirement measure. You only need 50% plus 1.
I see. So if we put it on the measure, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put in the request for 1.5% and no sunset, knowing that, okay, this is really the people's decisions. The people need to make that decision.
Correct.
And we want to make sure we keep the money locally, and we want to ask them if that's what they want to do. So if they vote yes on this measure, this is going on the ballot November, this November, then we will be pretty well off. We won't be in the red in the future. So
Correct.
I would go for 1.5% of no sunset.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. All right, so do we have a second? If I don't hear the second, so that's mean the motion failed. Am I right? Did it turn in?
Correct. Correct.
All right, so I don't hear any second. So that means the motion failed. All right. So any other questions, concerns from a member of the city council? All right, so that means that I don't see any will from a majority of the city council. They want to place a measure. What?
Mayor? Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's appetite for a 1.5. Is there a way we can just have an item to remove the sunset? I think what I'm hearing, the council's concerned, based on my end, that right now we're going to a tough time. A lot of us here, some of us have lost our jobs, and things are challenging for us. And so 1.5% really doesn't sound to me like it's palatable for the council. I mean, could you just have an item on a measure that basically gives them the option to sunset the clause, or I'm sorry, extend it? Is that something that could be a possibility?
You could create a sunset, keep it at 1% or 1.5%. You have a variety of choices. For example, you could.
No, I meant in terms of like for this item, given that there's no appetite for 1.5, if we do a 1%, we already have a sales tax measure on the books. Could we just do an item to do a sunset for the 1%? No,
You can do that.
That is possible.
Basically, remove the sunset.
And you could extend it 10, 20, 30 years, whatever you want to, as a sunset.
Because I think to me, what might be palatable to me, what I'm hearing is, given that the situation we're in, if we just remove that sunset for the current measure we have now, give voters the opportunity to choose that.
All right, so council member can.
Mr. Mayor, we cannot hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, so is that an earthquake? I heard the earthquake, okay, but anyway, so Councilmember Contreras, you're more than welcome to come up with any substitute motion that you believe, appropriate for the voter.
Well, I definitely think we need to preserve what work we've done. I know we've done a lot of work in making some strategic cuts and modifications and adapting to the new normal. But again, I do think that the measure has done a lot to keep a lot of our services intact, and I wouldn't want to see that go away. So, I'm open to a extension or removal of the current sunset for our current measure, and giving voters the opportunity to choose either.
Well, so it would be appropriate then, if you wanted to just simply vote to extend the current measure without a sunset. That can be a motion.
Is that your motion, Councilmember Contreras?
Yeah, I'm processing that. I'm looking at my notes here. Yeah, so I would say I make a motion to give the voters the opportunity to remove the sunset clause on our current sales tax measure.
City Attorney Jones and Councilmember Contreras, if I might suggest for the record.
Just before we finish there, sorry, I have a hard stop at 3:30. I didn't think this meeting was going to go on longer than an hour, but we're going in at 2.5, and so I have to go back to work. So
right now we have the motion from Councilmember Contreras.
Sorry, City Attorney Jones, if I might,
Please.
because of what will appear on the actual record of the motion, I would respectfully suggest perhaps that the correct terminology be renew the existing measure with no increase until ended by voters.
Excellent.
And if you could add to the motion the ability of the city attorney to take the existing resolution and the existing ordinance that are presented in the agenda and make those kinds of modifications, just minor modifications, to present it as a 1% continuation of the existing tax or renewal.
Yes.
Is that your motion, Councilmember Contreras?
I want to make sure I get that verbiage correctly. So if we could repeat that again one more time to make sure we have that correct. I know that Catherine Liu mentioned the correct verbiage for it.
Yeah, Mrs. Liu will provide it. Go ahead, Mrs. Liu.
No, City Attorney Jones, please. This is your lane. Thank you.
Well, I don't. You're the one that used the exact language. I didn't write it down, as I recall.
Okay.
You indicated.
If I might respectfully suggest that the motion be to extend the current Measure SS.
What was it, renew? I think the word we use renew.
To renew.
I thought you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, the word was renew.
Without raising the tax rate until ended by voters. And so directing the city attorney's team to make those modifications on the languages that they proposed today.
Very good.
That would be my motion.
Okay. Is there a second? Is there a second to that?
All right, we have the motion by Councilmember Contreras, and that consider like substitute motion, right? And the substitute motion is not on the floor.
No, there was no substance. There was never a second. This is an original motion. You just need a second.
All right. Do we have any second for Councilmember Contreras motion? All right, so no second on either like Vice
Sorry,
Mayor.
sorry, I was unmute when I said that. I second that.
All right, so we now have the motion made by Councilmember Contreras, second by Councilmember Nguyen.
So now we'd have a vote. It takes 4/5 vote.
All right, Mayor Ta,
Abstain?
Not really.
Vice Mayor Ho,
Vice Mayor Ho?
You're muted.
you're muted.
Would you repeat, please?
So the
It's on the
motion,
floor right now.
the motion right now is to, not in the technical terms, but renew the existing measure without raising the tax rate, no sunset, basically until voted out by the vote. And direct city staff and attorneys to revise the proposed resolution ordinances to reflect as such.
Okay, could you repeat the proposed revision?
To renew it for at 1% with no limitation, no sunset.
Yes.
Councilmember Contreras,
Yes.
Councilmember Doe,
No.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Yes.
Okay, that motion failed 3-1-1 with Mayor Ta abstaining and Councilmember Doe no.
All right, so
So let me interject real quickly. And maybe if Mark Mandel's still on the line, I know it requires a 4/5 vote to put it on. Normally, well, this is on a resolution.
No, this requires 4 affirmative votes.
4 affirmative votes. The abstention would not vote with the majority.
Requires 4 affirmative votes, and Mr. Todd would have to vote either aye or no, or aye in this case, in order for it to carry. An abstention is still basically a no vote.
That's correct.
All right, so I think that's it, right?
Okay.
Thank you.
So with that, I adjourn the meeting. Next regular meeting will be Wednesday, August 12th at 7 p.m. Meeting adjourned.